Hey guys, I'm with Coastal Business Supplies, and today we're going to be doing print and cuts with the Graphtec CE 6000.
Alright, so first we're going to go up here, we're going to select the Graphtec Studio icon. It'll give you this little update box. Unless it tells you there's one, just go ahead and hit continue. It'll begin to load up. And here we go. Now this green grid area is our workspace. It's where we select our paths and the trace area and stuff like that. So first off, we're going to go over here and we're going to open up a new file. Not a new file, but our picture file. Now you see that there's nothing in here. It's because right now the Graphtec Studio option is selected. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to scroll down and select the All Files option. Now bring up all of our images, and for this one we're going to use the piano. So we're just going to click that, hit OK, and there we go. Now we're going to go over here, we're going to change the page size. If you already have it loaded up, it will tell you that there's an 8.5 by 11, or you can also go to the ANSI options and do it. So now I'm just going to take this up and center it a little bit, just so that we don't have to worry about it rolling off the cutter. And that looks about right. So real quick, if you are printing anything in reverse, like light transfer paper or any other media, well, first you have to make sure you have your object selected. Then you go up here to Object, Mirror, and then we're going to flip it horizontally. And now just make sure that it prints in reverse, and so that all your lines are reversed too when you cut this stuff out. But since we're using the CIGAO, we're going to flip it back over. That still looks good. Alright, so now we're going to go over here and we're going to use our trace area button. And this is the tools where you select the paths and the different objects you want to cut out. We're going to start by grabbing the Select Trace Area tool and dragging this blue box over the image. Okay, now as you can see we have these yellow lines. That's the lines that the tracer is placed for the cutter to follow. But I don't want these little sections cut out. I actually want the entire piano. So first we're going to unclick the high pass filter. Now we'll fill in those lines for the most part. But you also have things like these keys and probably a couple other little bits. So help fill those in a little bit. We're going to mess with the threshold settings and try to fill in those little spaces that you might not notice at first. Sorry. Now normally you would select the trace tool, but for this the trace tool would also cut out those little keys. So we're going to use the Trace Outer Edge tool. And I'll just get that outside line cut out. If we move over here, and move the piano out of the way, you will see these red line, and that's our trace path. It just tells the cutter, that way the cutter knows that just do the outside, and none of the keys are selected, so we're good to go. So next we're going up here, we're going to select our registration marks, which is in this little fourth box right here. And first we got to turn these guys on. And for this one, I use the Type 2 mark. It gives us a little more room on the page, a little simpler for the cutter to find. I'm just going to go ahead and mess with some of these things a little bit, bring it closer to the image. It also helps make sure that the Graphtec doesn't roll off when it's trying to find these marks. So you want to keep it, depending on what you're cutting and what you're cutting on, you just want to make sure that you have it pretty close to the image you're cutting. You have multiple ways of adjusting that. You have the little sliders here, the numbers, and the little arrow keys, whichever one you're comfortable with. If you have preferred settings for an image, you can put those in by hand. And once we're comfortable with it, let's see. Alright, that looks good. So we're going to go over here to the little print icon. This guy right here. Click that guy. And I'm working with an Epson WF7010 series printer. So that's good. And we just hit the print option.
Alright, so to load it into the Graphtec, you just use these little rollers. First, there's a little lever back in the back that kind of makes these little rollers go up and down. So you make sure they're up. Now, as you can tell, there's these little blue tabs here. And you want to make sure the rollers are always under one of them. So this one we're going to keep over here, and we're just going to adjust the one on the side over here, just so that it kind of covers that edge. Also give them the cutting tool enough for them to work. Then you reach back, bring those rollers down, and then we go to the control panel. Alright, now that we have it loaded in, you see a couple selections here. You have these two rolls. That's usually if you're using vinyl or large heat transfer substrate. But for this one, since it's just a little 8.5, we're going to use the sheet option. So we're just going to go over here, hit number 3. Before we start cutting, we're going to first adjust a few things on the machine because we're using a fairly thin material. So first we're going to hit this condition test button right here. And the first thing we're going to adjust is the force, which is right here. That basically is how hard the blade hits the paper and how deep it cuts. So we're going to go ahead and hit number 4 on our panel. Now this first condition, we're going to change that down, bring that down to about an 8. Then to set it, we're going to hit enter. You can tell, see, it just now says 8. And now we're going to do a test cut. And so as you can see right here, you have two options. You can either do a single square or you can do 3 of them. We're just going to do 1. Just gotta make sure that you have it in. Hit enter. Alright, so you really can't see it, but what it did, it cut a little square right here in the corner of the page. You can kind of feel it if you run your thumb over it. Now, first you want to do is fill underneath the paper, make sure there is no sort of indentations, because there is, it means the blade still is a little too hard. But I don't feel anything, so we're going to go ahead and using a weeding tool, whatever you have handy, you're going to find a corner. Just see, we kind of pulled that out. Now you want to make sure you can pull it out without getting rid of that center square. That means it's just deep enough. Now that we've done our test cut, we're going to go ahead to our computer.
Alright, so now back here at the computer, we're just going to go up here to the little cutter option in this little bottom box over here. Click that. As you can see, the status is ready. The lines look alright. So we're just going to go ahead and hit the send to cutter button.